Every person in the village was gone. The fires had burned low, dinner sat unfinished. In 1930, a trapper stumbled upon a mystery.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to picture it. It's November 1930. You're standing out in the remote, freezing expanse of the Canadian subarctic. The wind is just howling, the snow is blinding, and you've stumbled upon a scene straight out of a nightmare. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most famous and honestly eerie legends of the Canadian North, the disappearance at Anjikuni Lake. For decades, this story has absolutely captivated fans of the paranormal, true crime buffs, you name it. We're going to look at the spine-chilling myth that took the world by storm, and then we'll uncover the deeply profound historical reality that this ghost story left buried in the ice.
It's basically the ultimate locked room mystery, right? But on a massive geographical scale. The core question that drove this legend for almost a century is simply, how does a village of 2,000 people vanish into thin air? The whole thing kicks off with a French-Canadian fur trapper named Joe Lebel. The story goes that Lebel was trekking through this incredibly harsh winter environment and sought shelter at an Inuit settlement he supposedly knew pretty well. But when he got there, this bustling village of men, women, and children was completely, utterly empty. I mean, not a single soul was left.
Section 1. The Vanishing Village Legend. Let's get into what people thought happened.
So this allegedly went down in the remote Kivalliq region of what's now Nunavut, right on the shores of Lake Anjikuni. And according to the stories that swept the globe, this wasn't some gradual abandonment. Whatever happened in a sudden, terrifying flash. The sheer level of cinematic detail reported is exactly what made this story explode. Lebel didn't just find empty tents. He supposedly found pots of caribou stew still simmering over low fires. He found unfinished parkas with bone needles literally still sticking out of the fabric, as if the seamstresses were interrupted mid-stitch. And maybe the most horrifying detail? He claimed to find 7 sled dogs tied to their posts, starved to death. That's a massive red flag, because those dogs were absolutely essential for survival. And on the outskirts of the camp, an ancestor's grave, totally emptied out, yet the stones around it hadn't been disturbed at all. I mean, it was the perfect recipe for a supernatural thriller.
But the myth didn't just survive, it mutated. It spread like wildfire. It started back in November 1930 when a journalist named Emmett E. Kelleher published this sensational article. In Kelleher's original piece, he reported 25 people missing from a small camp. Just 25. But as the decades rolled on, the story inflated. In 1959, an author named Frank Edwards put the tale in his hit book, Stranger Than Science, which really cemented it in pop culture. And by the 1970s, the population of this missing village had magically grown from 25 to over 2,000 people. Oh, and to top the whole shebang off, paranormal writers started throwing in tales of blue, pulsing UFO lights hovering over the lake.
Section 2. The RCMP Investigation. Let's look at the facts.
It's a fantastic campfire story for sure. But let's execute a hard shift here and look at what actually happened. Because while the media was busy publishing wild stories about alien abductions, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mounties, were conducting a formal, forensic investigation. They sent officers out to check records, cross-reference trading logs, and they even interviewed Lebel himself. And here is the definitive result of that investigation. In January 1931, RCMP Sergeant J. Nelson issued a very blunt statement: no foundation for this story. Bam! The Mounties permanently popped the paranormal bubble. They concluded there was no vanished village, no mass disappearance, and really no evidence that the original report was anything other than a complete fabrication or a wild exaggeration. The RCMP literally closed the book on this in 1931, even though the public kept reading the ghost story for decades to come.
So, the crucial point here is how wildly the media claims contrasted with just mundane, bureaucratic reality. The newspapers claimed Lebel was this seasoned veteran guide. The RCMP found out he had literally just taken out his very first trapping license that season. He was a total newcomer to the subarctic. The papers claimed a massive permanent town vanished. Well, the RCMP noted that a village of 2,000 people simply could not exist in that remote area. The environment only supported very small, mobile family groups. And that super creepy photograph published in the newspapers to prove the story, the Mounties recognized it immediately. It was just a stock photo from their own archives taken way back in 1909.
And this perfectly explains what actually happened. The Mounties and local anthropologists knew exactly what Lebel had stumbled upon. It wasn't an alien abduction, it was seasonal migration. The Podler-Mute, the Caribou Inuit group in that specific region, followed the caribou herds. When autumn ended, they packed up their light, essential gear and moved on.
They purposefully left behind heavy replaceable items, things like extra parkas, cooking pots, and dried meat caches, because they fully planned to return to that exact same camp the following year. So an inexperienced trapper basically walked into a totally normal, temporarily vacant seasonal camp and just panicked.
Section 3. The Real Inuit Disappearance.
Now here is where our explainer takes a much more solemn turn, because while the public was completely obsessed with a fake disappearance involving UFOs and simmering stew, a very real, deeply tragic disappearance was actually unfolding in that exact same region. This ghost story successfully obscured a devastating historical reality. While readers in faraway cities were thrilling themselves with science fiction, the inland Inuit populations, specifically bands like the Ahiarmut, were fighting for their lives. First, a severe ecological collapse decimated the caribou herds they relied on. This led to devastating periods of famine, which was then compounded by brutal outbreaks of tuberculosis. And then, rather than providing adequate medical care or hunting support, the Canadian government intervened with a series of catastrophic forced relocations between 1949 and 1959. They moved these communities to places where they simply could not survive.
Which brings us to this staggering number: hundreds. Not the fake 2,000 missing people from the urban legend. The true tragedy is that the Caribou Inuit population in the Kavalak region was decimated, dropping from thousands of people down to mere hundreds over this period. These were slow, bureaucratic, political disappearances. There were no flashing blue lights, just starvation, disease, and a government that failed its people.
Section 4. Myth obscuring true history. Let's bring this all together.
This right here is the true danger of urban legends when they intersect with real human geography. The persistence of the Anjikuni legend across 3 decades of formal denial supplied an entertaining mystery to a society that just wanted a thrilling story, while completely erasing a state-sponsored tragedy from the public consciousness. The mystery we manufactured obscured the catastrophe that actually happened. And this is exactly why this explainer matters today. The actual people of the Kivalliq region didn't vanish into the cosmos. Their descendants are still here. They live today in communities like Baker Lake and Arviat. They know exactly what happened to their families, their ancestors, and their land. They've known the entire time, while the rest of the world was busy reading pulp fiction about Joe LaBelle and his imaginary 2,000 missing villagers.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. Dark tourism and historical mysteries are fascinating. I mean, we all love a good puzzle, right? But when we look at a place like Anjikuni Lake, we have to ask ourselves, when we obsess over a manufactured mystery, whose real history are we erasing? It's a profound question about how we remember the past and who gets to tell the story. Thank you so much for joining me to uncover the truth behind the ice. Keep questioning what you read, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.